And we are live. Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone, to the Tuesday night hangout for the Bold team, the Bold My Lead Systems Pro team. Welcome aboard with us. And if you happen to be watching the replay afterwards, welcome to you folks as well. If you have anything that you want to say to join in the conversation in terms of a comment or whatever, please leave your comments, any questions in the comment section, and we will address them. Love to have your participation. Now today, what I would like to do is have sort of a roundtable kind of discussion rather than just me present for a while and then at the very end people will come in with their comments. So feel free to jump in at any time if you have something to say. We need to have only one person at a time with a live mic, though, so if you jump in, I'll mute myself and vice versa. So what I'm going to talk about today is a book that I read a couple of weeks ago. It's called The Traveler's Gift, and it was written by Andy Andrews. And he has 7 decisions that determine personal success written in it. And one of the reasons that it caught my attention and resonated so with me is because he listed these, he didn't list, he explained and described these 7 things, these 7 decisions, by embedding them in a historical context. And I kind of like history. I'm certainly not a history buff. I don't know a lot about history, but I like to learn about it. So that caught my attention too. And it spanned centuries. It was 7 different scenarios that he put our main character in. And the main character, without divulging the whole book, ran into some extremely difficult times in his life and was on the verge of throwing the towel in. And then he found himself in this situation where he was transported into different time and space zones, 7 different ones, and was given 7 different messages along the way. Now, I don't think that I'm going to get into all 7 of them. I don't think time will allow. So I will just start with one and go along, and we'll see how it goes. Before I do that, I want to bring the panel on and let everybody introduce themselves. And let me just start on my left. I see Danny. You want to come out, Danny?
Sure. Hi, Carol. Hey, this is Danny Cluche of DannyCluche.com, and I'm really interested to find out what these 7 decisions are that determine our success. It's going to be an interesting talk tonight.
I hope so. Thank you. And Ellie?
Hi, I'm Ellie Walsh on the other end of the house in upstate New York, and I don't even know what these 7 things are, so we gotta go find out what they are. I'm interested to find out, so let's do it.
All right. And then I have Jamie next in line.
Hi, Jamie Donnelly, Internet Mogul, New Jersey. And, I'm really excited to do the sort of roundtable approach because I know when you're presenting it, it's like you want to talk to someone, like you want to have a conversation. So I'm excited to do that. Forget the 7 decisions. That's the best decision yet, right?
Okay, Joycey girl. And then we have Michelle from our Southern contingency.
Hello, I am Michelle Eves, and I am also an internet marketer, and I'm not going to say mogul yet, Jamie. And so I am really excited. The way you describe the book, I want to run out and get it now and read it because it sounds really interesting. So I can't wait for the discussion. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And Ellie is on the other end of the house from me. we both live in upstate New York, and we both are in the business of internet marketing, online marketing. So let me start with this this first situation that our character David found himself in. I'm going to spare the details because they're not important. But at any rate, he found himself in this room, and he's wondering why it's so hot. He said somebody should put the air conditioner on. And then he started looking around, and he realized that it was not in the era of air conditioning. It was a little before that. So before he realized what was going on, he looked over, and there was an older man sitting in front of a desk. And he kind of recognized him, but he wasn't sure who it was. And the man looked up and started talking to him and introduced himself as President Harry Truman. So they conversed, and this is what happened to David in each one of the 7 situations. They began to converse, and David was trying to figure out, what the heck am I doing here with President Truman, and where are we? And Truman explained that he was about to become involved in the Potsdam Conference. And my own self, I didn't remember the historical importance of that. That's where the decision was made to drop the bomb on Japan. And I'm not going to get into the politics of that at all. But Truman kind of justified his reasoning why he was in favor of that to David. And the point of this interaction was, the buck stops here. I think I've heard that before in relation to Truman, meaning that something has to be done in terms of the way the war was going, and a decision had to be made one way or the other. And Truman was accepting responsibility, not blame, and he's saying it's not my fault, whatever, but somebody has to make a decision, and I'm going to say what I have to say, and that's my decision. The buck stops here. So he was telling David that he himself needs to step up to the plate and take responsibility for his life, and if he at all wants to turn it around and be successful, then the buck has to stop with him, and he has to assume that responsibility. And I kind of look back at a relatively recent situation that I found myself in, and that was with a prior company that I was involved in, not all that long ago, and it started off great and ended up not so great because they changed their comp plan, and financially things were not working out as well as they had in the beginning. I'll just leave it at that. So a decision had to be made, and we had to decide whether we were going to stay in there and push and push and push and see if we could make a go of it, or did we want to try something different. We first tried the push, 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 and didn't seem to go anywhere, so we decided, no, we got to do something different. And I came out of there with a lot of anger, along with a lot of sadness, and a whole mess of mixed emotions about mourning leaving that situation. And as time went on, I began to realize that that company is not responsible for my success or failure. I am. The buck stops with me. And it's not my business how they run their comp plan. Well, in a sense it is. It's my choice whether I want to stay with them or not. But it's not my business how they choose to run their business. And that's what they decided to do. And, so be it. Then it was up to me whether I wanted to stay or not. And I also remembered back a job that I had. There was a change in high administrative personnel, and I didn't like the new policies. I didn't like the new people. And apparently it showed, because I was called into somebody's office and they said, "Are you happy here?" And if you ever had a corporate job, you know what that means. Because you can leave if you want. So I made my decision right then and there. I was going to stick it out, so I did. And I said, no, I'll make a go of it. So again, the buck stopped with me. and it wasn't their responsibility to make me happy. It was my responsibility to find my peace if I was going to or not. So let me just throw it open at this point. Does anybody relate to that at all? Does anybody have anything that they would like to add to that?
I do.
If yes,
Absolutely.
go right ahead, Michelle.
Talking about stepping up and taking responsibility and making a decision. Listen, if you want to succeed, if you want to do this, you're going to have to do something that makes you uncomfortable. And I was refusing to do that for a year and a half, refusing to prospect, refusing to put myself out there, refusing Facebook. I mean, heck, I fought Ellie on that for a while. And I decided if I want to be successful, the successful people are on Facebook, they're talking to people, they're prospecting, and so I have to do it. And so that was a decision recently that I made. It was hard, and it's still not something that comes easily to me, but we all have to take that responsibility and do something that we may not be completely comfortable with. But if you want to run a successful business, sometimes that has to happen. And in your personal life as well. I mean, I had that in my personal life. You know, we had an upheaval a couple of years ago. You know, Mark lost his job, and I could blame everything on him, but, you know, I had responsibility in that too. And so I have to claim my responsibility, and, you know, nothing is ever anybody's 100% fault on anything. So even in personal life, we have to do that. So I like that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It relates to our personal life as well as the business life. So let me move on to a different scenario then. I won't be taking them in order as they are in the book. I'm just going to follow them as they relate to what you just said, Michelle. Another scenario that our hero here, David, found himself in was he would leave one scenario and he would go into almost like a fugue state, a disorientation, and then find himself someplace else. And he never knew, as I said, where he was or who he was with or whatever. But he sort of snapped out of it and found himself in this environment. He looked around, and there was dirt on the floor, and there was a desk and a couple of wooden chairs, and white canvas. He wasn't actually in a brick and mortar type establishment, a house, a building, and he realized he was in a tent, in a very large tent, and he just had a feeling he had been there in that area before, and he had, but that's a different scenario, and he didn't know who he was supposed to talk to there. And all of a sudden, the flaps of the tent opened, and I'm going to make a long story short. Ellie might make a short story long, but I'll make a long story short. And in walks this young fellow who checks everything out and goes over and makes sure that there's fresh water on the desk, enough glasses out, and what have you. Then he storms out again. He looked very officious. And David looked outside the tent, and he realized there was a podium out there, and somebody was speaking. And again, it was in times past, so there was no system set up. You know, it wasn't with a microphone or anything. A guy was just standing on the stage, and there were a couple of thousand people out there on horses and wagons and people sitting on the ground on quilts and what have you. And he's wondering, what the hell is going on here? And then comes in this tall guy. And who is it? He comes over to David and introduces himself. It's Abraham Lincoln. So they start talking, and he says to Lincoln, you know, what am I doing here? What am I with you? What's up? And he says, what are you doing here? So Lincoln says, well, we're in Gettysburg, and I'm here to dedicate a cemetery. He said, you know, there was a battle here a couple of months ago, and we lost 50,000 people in this battle. And it was actually, it would have been the turning point of the war had they lost it. The South would have won. But they didn't, obviously. So they started talking, and Lincoln was saying, talk about taking responsibility again. He said, you know, in spite of what people said, and he said, I know there's a lot of people criticizing me. He says, I know slavery was not right. There's no two ways about it. And if we allow slavery, we're setting ourselves up to be in bondage ourselves at some point. So he said, if you don't see it for somebody else, see it for yourself. And they entered into a discussion back and forth. And, David said, yeah, but like, what do you do with all this dissension, all this nastiness and the criticism that you receive? And he says, listen, if I listened to all this criticism, I would be paralyzed. And he said there's three kinds of ways that somebody can be. You can look for personal power just enough to get by on. And, it works for most people. And that's what I term mediocrity. And he says you can look for power that's a little bit more powerful, and you might run into a little bit more criticism and obstacles and what have you. And that's when you're looking for the power to not only take care of yourself, but also stretch yourself out and take care of your family. And then he said there's a third kind of power. And he said that's the kind of power when you know that something is right, something needs to be done, that there's a greater good that's to be had. And you need to exercise your leadership in that situation. And you're going to run into all kinds of haters and criticism and nastiness and people disagreeing and dissenting from what you're saying and where you want to go. But, too bad. If this is your vision, if you believe in it, stand by it and go for it. And he said, David, that's what you need to do in your life. You hadn't been doing that. So I'm thinking in terms of our businesses, how many people I've heard, especially, it seems almost the higher up the ladder you go in terms of income and leadership and influence, the more hate stuff that I hear people talking about, that they get, a lot of haters criticizing them and what have you. And there's also talking about those three levels of power. As you move up the ladder there's a lot of fear that comes into play there. And do you have the courage to break through that fear, to go for the greater good that you see, be it for yourself, be it for helping other people in your business, be it whatever your vision happens to be. So that said, I will leave that there and see if anybody wants to come in.
Okay, I will.
Go right ahead.
If you do not break through the fear, you're not going to grow forward in your business. And that's kind of the bottom line is, what was it that Abraham Lincoln said to him? What was the quote again, Carol? He said, don't listen to criticism.
Right, don't listen to criticism.
That will put the biggest fear in you, as far as I'm concerned, listening to criticism. That's the worst thing you can do.
Exactly. And he ended, go ahead, no, you finish, because then I'm going to come back.
No, yeah, well, I just wanted to say, yeah, you have to break through that fear, because if you don't, you just won't grow forward in your business at all. And that's all kind of part of it. Like, you break through it, and then you go, oh, that wasn't so bad. And then you have new fears that you're going to face. And it's all part of the process. And you have to go through that, or you just live in mediocrity and stay where you are.
Bingo. Right. And then there was a deeper message that Abraham Lincoln gave him as they continued their conversation. And he said, you know what, David? He said, bottom line, he said, I found in my life that I have to forgive. And David said, well, how can you forgive these people? How can you be so forgiving? Nobody's asking for forgiveness. They're criticizing you. They're being nasty. And Lincoln said to him, well, what happens is I find that I build up in myself anger and resentment and angst, and it consumes me, and it prevents me from going on and recognizing my bigger power. So I don't want to get stuck in that. And the only way I found to free myself so that I can move on is by forgiveness. And he says, David, you need to forgive too. And David said, well, who do I need to forgive? Lincoln said, well, it's not your wife. She's not mad at you. It's not your daughter. She's not mad at you. He said, you have to forgive yourself. That threw him on his butt. Because he was, he wasn't taking responsibility, he was taking blame. He was taking all the blame for everything on himself. And that's why he found himself in such desperate straits. And Ellie, I see you're
So
unmuted.
now we don't have to read this book. My God, we're getting the whole book. But, huh?
There's a lot more.
Oh, okay, good. It sounds very interesting. No wonder why she raved about it. But, you know, I mean, right from the start, you know, the buck stops here. You know, so many people I meet just don't want to deal with that, you know, because, oh shit, now I can't bitch and moan. You know, I can't blame them other people. I can't blame my boss. I can't blame my mother and father. I can't blame my spouse. I can't blame my friend. I can't blame the car dealership. The buck stops here. And it actually feels, because look, I was part of that mindset years ago. Okay, I was raised like that. So at first, when you start looking at that, it almost feels disempowering. This is that catch-22, because it almost feels powerful to blame somebody else. So we believe that shit, all right? Because we can go off with our mouths and rah, 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 this one's a fool, and this one's a jerk, and this one did me wrong. And it's like some kind of power coming out, you know? But you are so disempowering. Your life, your vibration, your whole way of living. And you don't know that until you take that step. Maybe that's a huge fear, okay? Even just to take that step into saying, see if this works, you know? Because, and you know, I'm not saying I never complain. I ain't got no freaking wings over here. So I'm not saying, oh, and Ellie never blames anybody. Okay, that's bullcrap. I do. There is something about that sometimes. And then you realize so many times today, as I'm starting to go, my mouth shuts down. All right? But it was like this instant response because you're pissed off. Who you really pissed off really is yourself. Whether you believe the buck stops here or not, who you're really pissed off at is yourself. Okay? And so, of course, Abraham Lincoln said you need to forgive yourself because that's who you're really pissed off at. And you don't even know it because you're so projecting it out. Okay? It's their fault. It's their fault. You just keep giving your freaking power away. All right? Because you keep giving all these other people power. And when you take that power, it's empowering and it's also humbling. All right, you're like, And in essence, we were talking about this when we were on together before we started this, because one of the things I was thinking about is we were talking about this, and Danny was talking about the fear and all, is this is the huge benefit of having a group. You know, and we're a small portion of the group that we're all part of, and then there's actually even a bigger group than us. But to have a group and have a community that you can come in here and talk about this kind of stuff, and digest it and understand it, all right, is huge power. It puts huge power, and it really is about you can't even do that until you're willing to accept responsibility for your life. All right, that's when a group like this really, really works for you. So to me, it was like we were actually talking about not Abraham Lincoln, okay, but we were talking about some stuff before we got on this live hangout because we have meetings together, and it was just like, oh my God, this actually fits in together, and the group and the community, because doing this for yourself, that can be difficult because the most of the people around you just ain't doing it. Okay, you know I could talk for 3 days, so I'll be quiet now. You're muted.
Yeah, I'm going to move on to another scenario that David found himself in. Again, he went into this sort of a fugue state and began to snap out of it, and found himself in some place that he smelled like salt water, and it was dark, but not pitch black. And he felt a little swaying, and he realized he was on a boat. And he says, well, now where the hell am I, and who am I going to be speaking with? And he found himself sitting on a bunch of coiled rope, and this little stocky guy with tattered clothes comes walking down the deck of the ship to him. It's an old ship, very old ship. And the guy comes walking to him and says, hi, David. He didn't introduce himself just yet. He said, follow me. And the old guy climbs, the other guy climbs up the mast and jumps into a crow's nest. And David tries to follow him as best he can, especially since it's kind of dark. And the sun is just beginning to come up in the sky. And the other guy reaches over, pulls him into the crow's nest and gets him in there. And then they start talking. And the guy, David says, well, where the hell am I? He says, well, you're on a ship. And he says, well, where are we going? Where are you going? And the guy says, I know where we're going. And he says, well, where? I don't see anything. And he says, you don't see the land up there? He says, no, I don't see any land. He says, well, wait till the sun comes up a little more. And then all of a sudden he realizes he's on the freaking Santa Maria. That's Christopher Columbus he's talking to. And he sees the two other ships, Nina and Pinto, behind him. And they start talking. And as the sun comes up more and more, David is looking at Christopher like he's nuts because he doesn't see any land. And he says, Christopher, where do you see this land? And he says, oh, it's there. I know it's there. And he says, I have a decided heart. I know it's there. My course is charted. So just then, somebody from below hollers up, Captain, Captain, come down. So two of them come down from the crow's nest. By the way, nobody else sees David in any of these scenarios except the person that he's talking to. So they both come down, and it's Columbus's first mate and a couple other seamen there. And they're saying, Captain, this is it. We got to turn around and go back. There's no land in sight. We're not getting any place. What are we doing here? And the captain says, aha, we can't turn back. There's not enough food if we turn back. We've been gone for so many days, and we only have so much food left. So we'll certainly perish. There's no two ways about it. We have to go on. And he says, don't worry. I have a decided heart, and my course is charted. So they go back up into the crow's nest, and they talk some more. And he says to David, he says, poor is the man whose future depends on the opinions and the permission of others. So they end up, David finally understands what he's saying, that he's determined. He's a determined man. He's going to find his land, that's for sure, or going to die trying, one of the two. And he says, he's thinking to himself, I really never had that much determination for myself. I gave up. I quit. And that was pretty much his interaction with Christopher. So, anybody think anything about quitting? And
Oh, I got this one. I got this one. So yeah, this one I can feel this one very true to me. I understand. Like in September. Wait, in September 1726. No, I'm kidding. In September of this year, we made a huge decision to move our entire family and to leave that corporate job that I had and the security of it to move in the direction we felt compelled to move in. Like, we knew nothing made sense. There was no really great plan. There was no clear outlook. Just we knew we had to do this. You know, we had a few reasons and a few wants associated with it, and we moved forward. Well, you know, it was this scenario of our plan B is that our plan A works. Because if our plan A didn't work, you know, we were up that creek with Christopher Columbus over there. And you know, we were also in that business where the comp plan changed and the direction we thought we were going in, the not the direction, but the vessel we were using, in Ellie's words as well, to get there, started to sink. We needed to hop into some other kind of vessel in order to get to where we wanted to go, right? Which was to be able to be home with our son, blah, 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 in the place we wanted to be, without the jobs and this and that and the other thing. We didn't know how to make it happen. We just knew it was going to happen. So one thing led to another thing, led to another thing, led to another thing, and we just had to keep piling through, piling through. We know this is it. We know this is what we're going to do. We know it's going to work out, despite everything that was happening. And where I find myself today, having stayed true to that decided heart, this is what I want for my family. This is what I want for my life. This is the direction we need to go. No questions, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This is it. It has, I mean, things probably worked out way better than I ever anticipated. And the future of where we're going, like that, it's like we saw land and then, whew, like the most beautiful sunset, you know? Things are opening up in ways that we never could have imagined when we just knew we just had to go in this direction. So staying true to yourself and staying true to that decided heart can mean so much more than the original intention, you know? You just have to stick to it and go, 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 you know? And don't let any of this and any of that, you know, that stuff, make you try to, you know, change your mind. You know what's right, and you just go, and it will work out better than imagined. That's it. That's all I have.
well, how many times have we heard in this business, you know, forget plan B, just have your plan A. Because if you have plan B, it's going to undermine your plan A.
That's scary as hell.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. But it's true. It does put your focus in that one direction. You're going to see land.
But it's totally against what we've been taught.
Right.
You know, and so, and I really think, well, plan A, really, the most important plan A you can ever have is following that intuition. And you're not going to hear intuition, and you're not even going to know you have intuition if you're still playing the blame game and the fear game. So all this stuff you've talked about already, okay, you know, unless you realize I'm going to take full responsibility for my life. Here's the thing about full responsibility in my life, okay? When something great happens, you go, yes, I did that. And when something shit happens, here's what you do. Yes, I did that. Because then you go, because I look at some of the stuff, I go, if I create that crap, oh my God, look out world, what I could create, all right, is amazing. So, you know, and just embracing that. And the plan A is really about, if I take responsibility for my life, then I need to trust my intuition and just keep following. And that doesn't mean you're not tweaking, because like we just said, we were over here. We didn't change our destination, okay, our direction. We changed the vehicle, the vessel, right? It's like, okay, we got to hop over here, but we're going the same way, you know. And I know the real direction of everybody that's sitting here in front of us is to make a better life for them and their family, because they have helped other people make a better life for them and their family. And that's huge. That just is. Okay, I'm done.
Okay. Now we're going to bring David into another scenario. And he gets his wits about him, and he finds himself in this tiny little, it's not quite an apartment, but it's a room. And he sees a couple, a middle-aged couple sitting at a table. And he knows there's some other people around. He can't quite count them all. He's not functioning all quite mentally yet. He sees a couple of teenagers playing cards or something on the floor. And he hears this bang, 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 bang coming from like downstairs. And it's a methodical banging. It starts at the top and works its way down and moves over a little bit. Starts at the top, works its way down, etc. Starts at the top, works its way down. Bang, bang, bang. And everybody in the apartment is quiet. Nobody's moving. And it's very, what's the word I want? Scantily furnished. Just the bare minimum is there. And he doesn't know where the hell he is again. So he says, now who am I supposed to be meeting here? And all of a sudden he turns a little bit. The banging stops. People are still quiet for a while. And then they begin to talk a little bit in very hushed tones. And then he turns and he sees this little girl, almost about the age of his young teenage daughter. And she starts talking to him. So he says, oh, you're the one I'm supposed to meet here. So she says, yes, I am. And she said, come on upstairs with me. And she asks her father, he's the guy who's sitting at the table, is it all right if I go upstairs? And he says, yes. He said, just stay away from the window. Remember that. So she takes him upstairs, and they stay away from the window. And he says, where are we? She says, we're in Amsterdam. And he says, what am I doing in Amsterdam? She says, we're in hiding. We're Jews. We're in hiding from my dad calls them the Gestapo. And he said, whoa. He's thinking to himself. He doesn't actually say that. But he's, all of a sudden, he's saying, how can this little girl and how can everybody else be so, like, normal with these Gestapo banging on a wall downstairs? I mean, that's like instant death or close to it if they find them. So they start talking, the little girl, and she points out the clock tower, and they watch the hands on the clock, and the clock bangs off, cling, 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 and what have you. Then they go downstairs, and she takes him into her room, which she shares with her sister, and it's a little teeny room. And he says, how do you have any privacy here? And she says, we managed to respect each other's privacy somehow. And there's a mattress on the floor. And he looks around, and she has some stuff posted on the wall, some things that it's like what we would consider to be a vision board today. She ripped some pictures out of a magazine and pasted them up somehow on the wall, and she had a couple of movie actresses there, and a picture of a beautiful home, and a handsome man, and a couple of children. And she says, that's what I'm going to do someday. I want to meet those actresses. I want to get married, and that's where I'm going to live. I want to have a couple of kids. And she's got this big smile on her face. And, all of a sudden he realizes, he says, what's your name? She says, Anne Frank. And he thinks to himself, oh my God, how can this little girl be so happy? I can't imagine my little girl being in circumstances like this. So he asks her, how can you be so happy living like this? And she says, I choose to be happy. Happy is a choice. My dad taught me that. And actually, she started to shed a few tears. And then she said, no, I'm not going to go there. I'm choosing to be happy. I'm going to be happy. She says, I can be miserable. I can be sad. I can be whatever I want to be, but I choose to be happy. And wait, there's one quote here I wanted to pull out. No, I'm not going to find it right now. All right, it's not important. At any rate, what is important is the fact that a person can make choices and can control their emotions with these choices. And again, he had to reflect back on himself, and he realized that given his life circumstances, he certainly was not choosing to be happy, given what was going on. Oh, she did say to him, you know, every morning, she said, I laugh for 7 seconds, and it just sets the tone for the day for me. It puts me in a good mood. So he thought to himself, my God, look at what this little girl has to face. And he knew, of course, what the future held for her. She didn't know it. And he thought, if she can be happy, I can certainly find some way to be happy. And, you know, that was the message that he got from her. So I don't know if anybody wants to throw in anything about that. If not, I'll go on to a different scenario. No. Okay. All right. Let me just grab a quick thing of water, and then there's a couple more, but I'm
I
going to
believe
go on.
happiness is a lifestyle. It's a choice. It's not about situations, and that's what Anne Frank was saying.
That's exactly what you
Again, I don't believe most of us or society in general raises people to even to believe that, okay? That it's a lifestyle. So getting up, and I would say laugh for 17 seconds. Abraham always talks about 17 seconds. All right, getting up and laughing, getting up, and I know several people here journal and, you know, write things of what they're grateful for or what they appreciate or what have you. But that is, it becomes a brain pattern, all right? But children are happy. They get pissy when they're annoyed, okay? But they are mainly happy little beings, you know? So that's a lifestyle. It is. Happiness. I don't need a reason to be happy. Okay,
All right.
I'm going.
The quote that I was looking for is she said to him, let me see. I don't sing because I'm not happy because I sing. I sing because I'm happy. So that kind of summed it up. All right, I'm going to go quickly through this one, and then we have to end it. He finds himself in another situation, and the situation is where he looks. No, you know what? I'm not going to do that one. I'm going to do a different one because that one's too long.
We were just getting taken down a road here, Carol. You're sitting back. Now listen, here we are going, and I'm like, yeah, where are we going now? And then you just cut me off like that. I feel, oh.
All right, we're going to go into another one here, and he sees a whole mess of bronze-colored, beautifully tanned people with robes and women with long hair braided and cloth in their hair and what have you, and they're all standing in a small conglomerate. There are like thousands of them, but there's a crowd, and there's these two women up in front, and a king sitting on a throne. And the king says to the women, okay, who's going to speak first? And the one says, look, here's what happened. We both just had babies. And I woke up this morning to feed my baby, and my baby was dead. And I looked over, and this other woman had a baby who was live. And she said, when I looked at that baby, I knew that that was my baby. She switched babies when we were sleeping. And the other woman says, oh, no, 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 that's not what happened at all. This is my baby. And she won't let me have it. And there's trouble here. You know, you got to let me have this baby. And the king says, oh, this is easy. He said, somebody bring me my sword. So we all know the story here, right? You know where we're going? It's, he says, all right, I'm going to take my sword and I'm going to cut this baby in half, and this way each of you can have half. And the woman says, okay, fine, here's the baby. So he says, all right, give me the baby. He takes the baby and he, of course, gives it to the other woman because he says, you're the real mother. You would not want to see your baby killed. So that was the end of that decision. And, of course, we're talking about King Solomon. And just, again, to make a long story short, I will say that the message that he had to give David was, I will seek wisdom. It waits to be gathered. You know, some of the stuff in this book, I got to tell you, it so resonated with me. It made my hair stand on end sometimes. And, you know, different strokes for different folks. Some people wouldn't like it at all. Some people like other stuff, whatever. But just some of the stuff in here, the way it was worded, I loved it. So he says, David, one of the problems you have is you're not looking for the right stuff. You're not looking for the right information. And he says, you have to listen. You're not quiet enough. There's too much noise going on around you. Too much monkey chatter, as we would say. So he said, you know, you have to be quiet, listen, and seek wisdom, which is right there. It's just waiting to be gathered. So they leave the particular room that they're in, and they go past the throne again. This was, they took a little dinner there, or lunch, or whatever. They were eating together. They walk past the throne, and David touches the throne, and Solomon says, you want to sit in it? And David said, oh, could I? And he says, yeah, sure, why not? It's just a chair. So David sits in it. He says, oh, my God, I feel so small in this throne chair. It's so big. And Solomon says to him, where is it that he says to him? At any rate, he says, power can be so humbling. You have no idea. This throne makes me feel small too. So, kind of two messages he gave him. You know, to have some humility, but at the same time, to be quiet within himself and seek the knowledge, the information, the wisdom that he needed in order to proceed with his life. And on that note, I'm going to end because we do have to end a little bit early tonight. Again, I want to thank folks who are here and who have joined us. And if you watch this replay later on, thank you. Again, put in any questions or comments that you have. We do check it periodically, and we will respond to them. And if there's anything on here that kind of resonated with you, that rang a bell with you, any of the people on here, if someone particularly invited you here, get back to that person. Or if not, you just happen to just come up here, but you're interested to find out a little bit more about what's going on with us, click the button below there, and you'll find out. And we'll be in touch. So, anybody else want to throw anything else in? Okay. I guess that's it. And on that note, we'll bid everybody adieu, and we'll see you next week, next Tuesday, 8 o'clock sharp. Bye for now.